about the muddy shadows.
Muddy shadows.
Yeah, I think he asked like how can you prevent like muddy shadows, something like that.
Okay, yeah. So let's talk about it. All right. So muddy forms and shadows usually is a product of overwork. Okay, so if you have a painting, or if you have a form, and you, like you say, you start off with this, and then you want to add a shadow to it, right? And you start to render it. This is kind of ideally kind of what you want to get, something that's blends a little bit more smooth, right? But what tends to happen is that, one, people don't get that first shape correct. They usually do this. They'll do right. So you already start off with like garbage, okay? And then the next thing you want to do is put in shadow, right? Like what the shadow value will be, something like that. And then the same approach is applied, but this is what people tend to do. You can see what the problems are occurring then, don't you? And then again, when you blend, this is the kind of results you want to achieve. And if you see what I've done there is I try to glaze as accurate as I can, stroke by stroke, as best I can. And with this other approach, people tend to do this. And then so they start to lose their original vision. You see what's going on there? And then when they correct for the edges, they tend to do this too. Right? So what are the large issues that I just kind of presented? Well, one of the large issues is that people tend to draw like this, like they're on their, like with paper and pencil. Because when you draw with like a pencil, you can do that, right? Like you can keep going and going until you get all the way around. Because with pencil, it doesn't build up. You don't have this effect with pencil. You don't have, when you put a mark and you put another mark, you don't have this overlapping brightening, right? Or actually a better example is that you don't have this, these little patches. See that? Because when you do a pencil, it builds on naturally. It looks like this, you know? And so people tend to draw instead of paint. That's one problem. And then the next problem is that when you're drawing with the pencil, you're also not dealing with varying sizes. You're usually dealing with one size, right? Like a very thin size. And so when you're painting and you're dealing with the larger brushstrokes and you're doing the same thing, you tend to get things more muddy right away. Now, if you're starting to, paint and you don't recognize this, but you recognize that your painting is starting to get a little more muddier than you like, then that's usually partially the problem, is that you're a little too pencilish when you're drawing, or sorry, painting. You just need to be more broader with your strokes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And so generally what you want to do is you want to have accurate shapes and accurate shapes and accurate, accurate shapes and accurate brushstrokes. And if you do like a kind of a choppy kind of painting style, then you have to know why that's valuable. And it's usually valuable whenever you're trying to do anything that's detail oriented. All right. Any other questions? Anybody? Guys have all the answers in the world already? Dang. Best in
I've got one.
Okay, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Don't worry. I'll ask afterwards.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Just go on.
Cool. AJ, you're freelancing at the moment, right? And you've worked in a studio before. Or you used to work in a studio.
Yeah, I freelance now because I work from home and I teach. Teaching is my primary source of income, and then freelance is a supplement.
I was just wondering if you prefer the freelance or self-employed lifestyle to working in a studio, and if you'd ever go or want to go back to working in a studio. And then beyond that, if you have any tips on how to stay sane as a freelancer.
That implies that you go crazy if you're a freelancer.
Some people do.
So I prefer working studio. I think I work better. I think I work more effective. And mostly just because I have a very limited amount of distractions. And plus I'm a very social person. I like to just be around other people. You know?
Yeah.
And so I prefer studio, but I prefer being around my family more than my own preference of work. Does that make sense? Yeah. I like the freedom that I can just, right after this class, I can go hang out with my kids for like an hour. Or even during the break, go hang out with my kids and my wife and talk to them and hang out. These people are the most important people in my life, and I want to spend every waking hour with them if I can. The epiphany that hit me was that I work so hard so that I can find more time to be with my family. That was always my goal. And then I realized there's no reason why I can't do that now. And so that's why I made the change. It's a transition. I think I'm growing more and more attached to the idea from working from home. That's something that I actually prefer than studio, because there was a moment where I stopped working from home and worked at the studio, you know, and then I was like, nah, I'm gonna go back to working from home, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think I've come around, but I think overall I do actually prefer working in studio because of the reasons I just said. Like, I like working with other people.
Okay.
But I prefer being with my family more. So this is why I'm doing it. Okay. Like if I had no family and it was just me, right, then I'll probably be working at studio. So I'll probably still be at Blizzard. I loved working there. This all make sense to you?
It does. Yeah.
Okay. And now how do you keep sane? Or a better question probably would be, how do you stay effective? Well, you just got to just make lists and wake up early.
Yeah.
And you make lists and schedule yourself, you know, like if you don't schedule yourself, see that's the thing that work does, right? Like when you go to an office, like there's a schedule, like you have to be there at 10 and you can leave at around 6, you know, that's like set. You can't just get up and just go whenever, unless you work at a very specific kind of studio, you know? But you get my point, like, and that rigid schedule, that limitation is all, like limitations in most situations are actually really powerful. You know, they're really powerful tools to demonstrate an opportunity to progress your abilities. Okay. And so what happened with me is, yeah, just very much that. Like I just became really I like that. I become really focused when I'm like literally have to work for X amount of time, you know? And I think a lot of people are like that too, but there's some people who don't like that. They don't like to have such a rigid schedule, and they work fine on their own. You know, like there are people that work really effective like that. And if you know what your personality type is, and you know that you would prefer working in studio because of the reasons above or for other personal reasons, then aim for that. But if you would like to just work from home and you work really great like that, then do that. But if you have a preference, like for instance, right now, let's say you are working from home, but you don't want to, you'd rather do studio work, then try to do everything in your power to do that, right? And then in reverse, if you're working from the studio, but you don't want to, you wish you can work from home, then do everything in your power to do that. Make sense? And so in either situation, the idea is still the same. Do what you like. And the best way to know for sure is to do both.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've done both, and I've done both for many hours and years. So I have a lot more experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
that makes a lot of
yeah, but I get the like working from home is really challenging part. I get that. Because you can be distracted, especially if you have kids, like they're running around all the time and screaming. But we've taught the kids to leave me alone. I've actually have this little thing where it's like those like do not disturb things you hang on your door, like at a hotel. I have one of those on the door, so they don't come in just running in. And I've taught them not to do that because in the beginning they would just come in all the time, and my wife too. She would just come in and just ask me like to open a jar, and not knowing that like I'm like in the middle of like a meeting or something. Or like I'm like in the flow, I'm like flowing and I'm like really doing some good work, and then it's disrupted because I have to open a jar. And I was telling my wife like that doesn't make any sense. Like if I was a construction worker, I was in the middle of hammering a nail, and putting together like some sort of constructing some sort of wall, whatever. Like you wouldn't just come by, like leave the home, come all the way over here, just for me to open a jar, right?
Yeah.
You got to treat it like that. You got to treat it like I'm not here, because then you're just gonna have me do all these things, like do all these chores, and I can't keep doing chores because I have to work. And so, like, I don't mind doing chores. Just there's a time and place, and so that was one thing that was actually pretty challenging, mostly for my kids and my wife. Yeah, and like I said, it wasn't just my kids. It was like my wife was doing it too. She didn't recognize. She said, "Hey, can you take out the trash? Hey, can you put these dishes away? Can you wash the bottles? Can you hold the baby for a second?" Like, all, like this, it adds up, man. And I'm like, just pretend I'm not here, man. Like, how would you do any of this if I wasn't even here? Like, I get it's like helping you and it's convenient, but right now, as we speak, I'm in the middle of work, so please let me work. And she's gotten much better about that. And so she will do stuff like she'll actually just leave. She'll take the kids and go, and they'll be out of the house so that I can actually will be uninterrupted. That's really helpful. But that's the kind of stuff you have to do. You have to have communication with your partner. If you have one, that's going to be like one of the first things you need to do. Because like, again, if you're at an office, that doesn't happen. The worst that can happen in terms of distraction is small talk. It's like one of my least favorite things. It's not that talking to other people, like I said, I actually love it, and I'm part of the problem too. Is why I'm saying it. Is that like you'll go to someone's desk, and then you'll just talk to them for like an hour about just whatever, And if you do that enough, that's also really disruptive. So I found a way of getting past that, which is I would just, for one, just have a timer, and I couldn't get up to do anything unless that timer was done, and I would put on headphones, right? And I think that helped. if you don't have headphones on, then people think that's an open invitation to just start talking to you. So there's stuff in both cases, you know. But in the latter one, where you're working in a studio, it's just very unlikely to be as distracted, but it can happen still.
Yeah.
And it's for the same reasons. Like if you're just working from home and you're just in your office and there's no lock to the door, you know, your wife's going to come in or your kids are going to run in. There was like that really popular or viral YouTube video, or I think it was a YouTube video where the guy was being interviewed and then like the kids come in making a bunch of noise. And this is like during live television, like he was just in his home office.
Yeah.
And then the
I've
little kid comes in, you know what I mean? Like that's my day by day. I was in a meeting with a studio, like a big studio the other day. I think it was like last week. And they were like pitching me their game. They're like, "Oh, this is our game idea, and like it takes place here, and it's really epic, and we want this and that." And you know, the guy was like going on, and then my baby, I was sitting next to my baby, and he was just started laughing. You know, my baby, and because he was just looking at me, he couldn't hear what was being said. He was just laughing, and so I had to like mute my mic, you know, because I was still listening. I was just like not like smothering my baby, so that my baby would shut up. You know, like that scenario where, what would you do if you were like during Nazi Germany and you were a Jew? There's like this or not paradox, but this like really hard riddle, which a lot of people may have actually lived through, which was if you were, it's like a moral question, right? If you were in this situation where there's a lot of, like, you know, the Nazis are hunting for Jews, and you're underneath like the floorboards, and you and like a dozen other people, you know, children, women, and other men, right? And you're holding your baby, or you could be female in this, it doesn't matter, but you're holding your child, your own baby. And the baby starts to cry a little bit. What do? You know, because scenario one, you smother your baby till they die and save the greater group, right? The large number, or let your baby cry and then get everyone killed. It's a really hard question. So I was thinking about that while I was having my meeting. I was like, I don't have to do that. I can just mute my mic. You know, and in the worst case scenario, he just hears a baby crying and it's just kind of disruptive, you know, but he understood. He knew that I was working from home and I was calling from home. I made it very clear to him, you know, but that's my point. Like, little stuff like that, you know, that might annoy people. Just get over it. It's not that's the trade-off, right? Mm-hmm. And so you just got to find ways to kind of avoid any kind of awkwardness.
Yeah.
But overall, I like freelance. I like studio. I like both. But if I had to truly pick one, independent of what was going on outside, like personal reasons, like my family and everything like that, then I would absolutely choose working at studio. But with the circumstances that I have now, with the family and all stuff, I absolutely choose working from home.
Cool. Yeah, I would love to. I'm freelancing at the moment, and I have been for a while. And I would love to work in a studio, but it would unfortunately mean leaving the country as well. So it's two really big decisions, and I've just kind of been in limbo, just sticking with the freelance because it's going pretty well. And like you're saying, it depends a lot on your personality, and it really does work for me. So, you know, it really would just be a case of finding out if the grass is greener on the other side or not.
It's always a case of grass is greener.
Yeah.
Meaning that you might get there and hate it. Like I have friends who went and worked at Blizzard and they were originally freelancers and they thought it was going to be like this glorified, amazing thing, but it's not. No, it's pretty sterile. You go to work and you just sit there and you grind it out for a few hours out of the day. And, you know, get to hang out with other people. Like I said, it's not, it's just, there's a little more structure. That's really it. And you get to talk to other people more often.
Yeah.
And if that's something you prefer, that is what I do prefer, you know, then studio life is definitely great for you. But if you don't need to talk to other people and or maybe the way that you talk to other people, like through the internet, is your solution. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I also like the fact that if you are freelancing, you can kind of relocate yourself. So I would travel for a bit and things like that. And I think I would really miss that freedom of just being able to decide that I want to pack my bag and take my laptop and go somewhere for a month. It would be very hard for me to give that up as well.
Yeah, there it is. So, I
But
mean,
yeah,
those are true statements. Those are things you would actually have to sacrifice for sure.
yeah.
So, yeah, hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Awesome. I had a lot of the same thoughts, actually.
Cool.
That's Diego. I'm starting out now with Freelance Job, and I have one coming up soon.
Cool, man. Good job.
Thanks. But it is like a storyboard job, and I think the hard thing for me is to figure out how I should like charge things, and if there's something I should look out for or something like that. I don't know if you charge like hourly or how it works. Like
so I do a day rate nowadays, and my hourly rate fluctuates depending on how much work I spend on something, but I usually just do a day rate. So to give you an example of how you should think about it, the stuff, it's pretty simple. Think about how much you're worth an hour, right? Let's say you're worth $50 an hour, okay? And the client says that we only have $500 to pay you, okay? And that means that you can work no more than 10 hours on this project. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if you work, let's say, 20 hours, it's double. Then you're only making $25 an hour, which doesn't seem too bad. But let's say you double that and you work 40 hours. Now you're working for like $12 an hour. See what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then if you work even more, every hour after that, your cost per hour is going down exponentially. Or no, not exponentially, but just going down dramatically. Okay? Making it not worth that time. Because especially if you're going for $12 an hour, you can make that money right now working at a fast food restaurant, probably, or at a bank. You know, you just got to apply. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of the point I'm trying to make with this, is that you got to be rigid on that and that alone. So I usually say, yeah, it's about $500 a day, you know, and I usually spend about 4 to 5 hours per day. So I'm rolling at about $100 an hour. But I'm okay if I go to even $50 an hour, you know? And so let's say they only give me $500, but I spend, 10 hours on it. That's the most I usually will spend. Okay? But I try to get it done in like a few hours. And that way they'll pay me for that. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And I gauge the client too. Like I know some clients can't afford to pay what I'm asking for. You know what I mean? And so then I keep that in consideration. So then I charge reasonably less, but I don't work less. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't work more. I just charge less basically by working less. So if they only have $200, then I tell them I'm only going to spend about a half a day on it. Like so about 2 to 3 hours. Make sense?
Yeah.
But I don't tell them I'm going to work 2 to 3 hours. I just say it's half a day. Yeah. And then usually my 2 to 3 hour sketches are pretty reasonable and people are generally happy with them. You get it?
What if they want like a big project being done that you have to maybe you have to work for longer periods of time? Do you just still say like daily rate, or do you say, okay, I'm going to make this for 10,000 or something?
You just do the math. That's all you got to do. Just whatever you think you're worth an hour, you just do the math for how long they want you to work. It's that simple. Okay. So if they say they want you to work on it for like 2 months, whatever, then it's not, a bad idea to ask for around like $10,000 or even more. Right.
Yeah.
Because that's how much work you're expecting to work on it full time. Right. And you're going to be working on it for that long period of time. So you expect that much money to be paid. Make sense? And so if they're like, yeah, we want you to work on this for 2 months for like $500, that's an easy no. Okay? Because then you'll be only working for dollars an hour. Okay? But if they're like, yeah, we'll give you $10,000, then you can try to budget your time more effectively around that, right? And it seems like a lot of money, like $10,000, but for 2 months worth of work, it really isn't. And that money is going to go somewhere. You're going to spend it on food and housing and all that stuff. It's not like you're really going to go out and buy a Bugatti because then you'll be broke. You won't have anything, like you need to use it for cost of living. So you always have to think about that. Okay. Yeah. I've come to the realization that I need to charge more because I work much faster these days. And so what ends up happening is that I'll say, this is my day rate. And then they'll say, great. And then I'll work for like a day. And then they're like, perfect.
What about iterations if they say, like, I don't like the chin on the character? Oh.
That's exactly my point. All of what I just said is included.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So if they want to have sketches, exploration, all that stuff for $500, then they'll only get 10 hours. You get it? Like nothing has changed.
Yeah.
They just will have to expect less super refined work. Okay. Like it's not that they shouldn't ask for that stuff. That's fine. You just won't you won't treat each day like you won't spend a whole day on thumbnails and iterations because you don't have time to. You spend like a quarter of a day, right? Send that over to them. They get a review of it and then spend another quarter of a day making those changes and doing iterations, right? And then you do another half a day maybe, or like a quarter of a day again, to start getting the final revisions in color. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then you do another quarter of a day to get it finished and then call it a day.
Awesome.
And get paid. And if they want more work, you just tell them, all right, well then it's going to cost you more work. More money for more work. It's not unreasonable. Some people, will have, they exist and I'm sure you've seen them, people like flag them where they'll be like, you should be paying me to pay you or like giving you this exposure. No, that's not how it works. If what they wanted could be done by themselves, then they wouldn't ask for the help in the first place.
Yeah, definitely.
Like if they're reaching out to you, that means they need something. And if you provide that service for free, you're sending the wrong precedent for the rest of us artists, and you just shot yourself in the foot. I had a friend, told him, I was like, try not to do internships unless you're paid. And he did an unpaid internship, and then they ended up not paying him at all. He didn't have anything in contract or nothing. And I said, yep, that's exactly right. It's like, you're in the wrong here. You made a tremendous mistake. And I told him, and it's not like I didn't tell you. So I don't feel too bad for you. Right. And he's like, yeah, I know. It's like, this is a big mistake, but I don't know what to do, And I said, well, what you can do is you can publicly announce what's going on. Right. And hopefully that will be enough to push them to pay you. And that's what he did. And then they ended up paying them.
Great.
But I said, it doesn't always work out that way, It doesn't always. Sometimes they'll just fucking run with the money and you'll never see them again.
Yeah.
and there's nothing you can do legally. Nothing you can do. There's no contract. That's what contracts are for, y'all, to make sure that you can get paid. It's not only for your protection, it's also their protection, that you make sure that you do the work. So contracts are good for both parties.
Sweet. But I think my question was answered, so it was super good.
Yeah, cool. Any other questions?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, so I was watching this video from Feng Shu. He has his YouTube channel and all that, and he says that when you're learning, he recommends just using the round brush, even if you have to paint textures or something that's kind of messy. But yeah, sometimes I guess the brushes with textures can be much faster. What do you think? I mean, if I'm just kind of starting to paint like this, should I follow his advice and just focus on round brushes and more starting brushes?
Yeah, I got you. So why do you think he says that? What do you think is the purpose of that advice?
I think that if it gives you confidence to be sure that you can render any kind of stuff without needing all these resources. Maybe.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. So he's not wrong, and he's not entirely right either. So this is kind of how I see the things like this, like these types of problems that I see students run into. One of the things I want people to recognize whenever they're like faced with these types of conundrums, okay, is to think about it simply like this. Are there any examples of people who do not paint with the round brush and are extremely skilled? Right? Did they start with only the round brush? And if the answer is yes, then that's fair to say that maybe you don't need the round brush. Okay? And so then there must be something more fundamental then that can be learned that doesn't involve the round brush. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let me give you a good example. I had a student once tell me, he wants to learn how to paint because he wants to be a better designer. He feels that if he paints everything, right? He paints everything and draws everything, that he will be a better designer, that he will have a better sense of design. Okay? Vitaly Bogorov, I don't think he's ever drawn very often. He's pretty much been a 3D person for the majority of his career. Do you think that he struggles with design?
Not at all.
Yeah, right? Let's look at another example. Mike Nash has been also designing things primarily using 3D. Do you think he too has a problem with design?
Neither.
No, right? And he hasn't drawn often either. You see where I'm going with this? Right? So, and I was talking a little bit about this earlier too. Like I don't think it's important. Wait, hold on just a second. This is an example of my daughter coming in. Lila, close the door, please. Just comes in whenever. So, I've seen this before, right? Where people will matter of fact everything, live in absolutes. Okay. And like I said earlier in this class, I was saying I don't really care how you guys get to the final result as long as it's good. And so I stopped focusing on stuff like using the round brush as a mandatory tool. Now, can you become a better painter because you're using such strict guidelines? Yeah, of course. Limitations are very helpful to master fundamental ideas, right? But that's the thing. That's the point here. It's about mastering fundamental ideas. So you can essentially master all these fundamental ideas using texture brushes. Like, what's the difference between a round brush and a texture brush? Like, what is truly the difference? They both have their pros and they both have their cons, right? Like a round brush is indifferent. It doesn't have anything. So that's why it has its pros, right? Like you can paint with it pretty effectively with most things. It has no direction. It has no texture. It's really bland, which makes it have a lot of control. But with that blandness, you miss out on texture and all that stuff. You have to hand paint a lot of that stuff. And that's kind of tedious and time consuming. With a texture brush, you can have texture and like versatility in your painting right away. But maybe you'll lose a little bit of control. But it doesn't mean that you can't learn how to paint accurate lighting and forms without the round brush, nor does it mean that only the round brush is the tool to learn how to paint accurate forms. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so whenever you see these types of things come up and you see other artists say, well, you should only do this, you should only do that, I'll be very skeptical of that, is all I'm saying. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't say it's the better. He just kind of recommends it to begin.
And I'm saying that even that recommendation you should be skeptical of, right? Like, I actually agree that there's some power into doing that. But what I've come to learn is that the best strategy is to try all sorts of things to learn fundamental ideas. You can do it through traditional means. You can do it through 3D. You can do it through photo bashing. Master fundamental principles, no matter how you go about doing it. Because if you think about it, there was a time where people would have probably said you needed to learn how to paint using oils or acrylics, right? And my experience with oils and acrylics is very limited. You understand? And then there will be a time in our lifetime, we're going to see this, where people won't even use Photoshop to paint. They'll use something else probably, you know? And we'll be like, you know, to learn digital painting, you got to learn it through Photoshop first. There's going to be people who say this, okay? And they're going to be just as wrong as the people who are saying that to paint effectively, you have to learn how to paint traditionally, you know, or use traditional medium. Make sense?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my stance on a lot of this stuff, right? It's just really focus on fundamental ideas. So what are the fundamental ideas that you should try to master then? Right? What are these things that I'm talking about? Well, one of them is, forms, perspective, anatomy, design principles, these types of things that come with you no matter what tool you're using. Get it?
Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then that way, yeah, you're not so worried about learning the round brush. You're learning more about, can I paint a sphere and make it look metallic? Right? And it's the same with 3D. Like, just because you're in 3D doesn't mean you can make something look photorealistic. You get it? It's like there's a skill there too. Okay? To understand how real lighting and the real world looks. Because 3D, and don't get me wrong, eventually I think 3D will be that good where you don't even have to know. Like, it'll just do it for you, right? But right now, you still kind of have to know, okay? At least for now, right? Because if you go online and you just type in 3D art, maybe 3D models. Right, you got some stuff that is going to be more believable, right? This is like a scan, right? You're gonna have stuff that's more believable, and then you're gonna have stuff that's not believable at all. Okay, you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
And it's all 3D, but there is good 3D and then there's bad 3D, you know? You see my point? So
Yeah.
even if you're in 3D, it doesn't mean you're going to get photorealism. This is pretty cool, you know? But this is like just a simple furniture, and it's very clearly fake. We can see it easily, you know?
Yeah.
And or easier. And so that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. Okay, so even in like tools that give us a huge advantage, right? There's still opportunity to have really crappy, design. Does that make sense? And
Yes.
so that's why I spend a lot of my time and effort focusing on fundamental ideas versus just like kind of tool-oriented stuff. Like I'm doing that with programming right now. I'm doing the same thing with programming. So anyway, does it make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Any other questions? I think I'm going to call this demo a done. Nothing? Oh, man. All right. Oh, I'm tired. I think I need to get some coffee or something. With that being said, though, peace out, friends. Great class. You guys are killing it. I appreciate all the hard work. Work hard over the weekend. I believe in you guys. Take your time, hang out with each other, and peace out, friends. Have a great, great weekend.
Nice one.
Wait, what? What did you say?
Nice one.
All right. Thank you. See you
No
later.
worries. See you later.
Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you liked the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.